There are a ton of mistakes in Valorant that beginner players make game after game, and if you don't fix these mistakes, it doesn't matter how long you play Valorant, you will continuously make them and you won't climb. So we're gonna go over the 5 beginner mistakes that you need to avoid right now, starting off with number 1, holding on to your abilities and ultimates. Now it seems obvious, right? When you get abilities, you want to use them round after round, and when you get ultimates, you want to use those as well. However, a lot of players are not using their abilities nearly enough, and they're holding on to their ultimates for far too long. If you ever walk out with full abilities, use none of them, and die, you made a huge mistake, because your abilities could have set up an advantaged engagement for you or your team, and you taking a dry peek, not utilizing these abilities, and dying means that you're letting all that potential value and your ability to clutch up and win a 1v1 or even the round off the table. And I think one of the reasons why people don't use their abilities that much is because you die a lot when you try to use them. You're whipping them out in situations where you're feeling like you're dying when you have your ability out when you should have had your gun out. This is a really common problem, and what you need to do is you need to understand the space around your character, the area, and that is an area that keeps you protected. So if there's no enemies there, they're not going to be able to interrupt you whipping out an ability, using a flash, using a smoke, using whatever it is, because if they wanted to close the gap, they would have to make noise, which you could respond to. It's about not just whipping out abilities randomly and just assuming that enemies are not around the corner or in a cubby or close by. You have to make sure that's true. And as you experiment with this more and get better and better at it, you'll know when and where you can whip out an ability where it's not possible for you to get interrupted or killed. And you're also going to make sure that you're using your abilities consistently throughout every single round. And this actually is a problem that's even worse with ultimates, where players will often try to find the most amount of value with an ultimate, and they're really afraid of wasting an ult. So they'll consistently wait and wait and wait. And there were many opportunities where you could have clutched up a round or ensured a victory in a round that maybe you had a slight advantage in, but instead you held that ultimate and you really looked for the perfect moment to use it. And there's a lot of problems with this. Number 1, you're not getting a lot of practice out of your ultimate. You got to think about it where every time you use an ultimate and it works or doesn't, you're learning something. And if you're only popping 2 or 3 ultimates a game, you're really learning a lot less quickly than if you were popping 5 or 6. More repetition means more learning overall, more trial and error. And it's also important that you're realistic with the value that you're getting out of an ultimate. Sometimes you don't need your ultimate to be a 10 out of 10 in value. Sometimes you just need to get someone off the spike. Sometimes you just need to stall for time. Sometimes you just need to minimize the amount of angles you could be peeked from. There's a lot of ways to use an ultimate to get a small advantage instead of trying to go for these grand slams that may never line up, and even if they do, something could go wrong and you basically saved your ultimates for this one moment that didn't work out the way that you imagined it to, and then you just didn't use any ultimates the whole game. And you can actually get a lot of ultimates if you're much more proactive. You use your ultimates more frequently, you'll actually be well on your way to building up your next ultimate. Of course, your abilities are only half the game, and if you can't hit the broadside of a barn, it's really not going to matter. That's where we come in. Our hour-long Aim God Masterclass is designed to take you from looking like this to looking like this in absolutely no time. It's built out from all the best tips from pro players, covering literally everything that you could possibly need to know about aiming. From where to hold your crosshair, how to peek, and even just where and where not to stand, we've gone through it all. We're so confident in our ability to get you fragging, actually, we even offer a money-back guarantee, so you don't climb, you don't pay. Check it out using the link in the description below, and other than that, let's get back into the video. Another big mistake that a lot of people make, if you don't ingrain this into your overall movement, you're really going to keep making this mistake, and it's peeking incorrectly whether you're trying to take gun duels or challenge a specific spot you think an enemy could be in. And it's really important that you're actually moving your character model only left to right. You're not going in a diagonal, you're not going forward diagonal, backwards diagonal, you're not even walking across any space in a straight line. Straight lines are terrible because the thing is, enemies are going to see you far before you're seeing them. You want to be able to pop up on an enemy screen just out of nowhere where they don't have a lot of time to respond to you, and the second you're out, you're already starting to stop and you can see them and you can shoot them. This is really important, and that's why you're moving left to right. If you move in a diagonal, enemies will start to see your shoulders, see part of your body far before you're going to be able to see them, and especially if you're walking in a straight line. From the enemy's point of view, you're going to be slightly rounding that corner with your character body, and they're going to have a lot of time to react to you before you're ready to fight them. And this could be a terrible habit that you pick up, especially if you're playing things like deathmatch, where you're walking around the map trying to find action when you should really be going side to side. And if you're ever practicing in deathmatch, you should be actually peeking the angles as if you were in a real game, where you're moving from one spot to the next, right to left or left to right, specifically challenging that area, and then doing the same thing. You're almost like crab walking across the map. You're not walking in a straight line across the map, because that teaches those bad habits. Now, another huge mistake that a lot of players are making is how to spray, when to spray, and what to spray. It's really important that you understand the core aspect of a tracer round. So some guns are not going to be able to be seen through a smoke. So this includes anything with a suppressor. If we're talking about a ghost, if we're talking about a specter, if we're talking about a phantom, these weapons can spray, and it's really hard or impossible to identify where the bullets are coming from. So you're going to be able to do this really liberally. And when a lot of new players pick up these guns, they don't realize that that's a core strength of these guns, so they're not spraying enough through smokes and things like that. Now, you still have to be aware that oftentimes enemies will just swing through a smoke the second you start to spray, so you have to be ready for that. And especially if you're close, if you try to spray through a smoke and reload, they can push you, so be careful. But there are going to be a lot of moments where you can clear out smokes, or you can deal damage in smokes, and you just want to spray a lot in them, especially if you don't have a tracer. Another thing that you should do is, after you finish a round, check and see if there was any damage you did to players, even if you didn't get a kill, because there's a lot of situations where you're going to do a lot of damage, but you don't think that you did because you didn't actually get any response to your spray. But if you can start to see those numbers, you can start to see when your actual spray prediction or sprays in general actually did get some value and maybe helped your teammates confirm a kill later on in the round. Now, this isn't to say that you can't spray with weapons that do leave a tracer. You just can't spray for a very long periods of time, because if, let's say, you're spraying the left side of the smoke and you are doing that for a giant burst and enemies can see that, they can easily line up to exactly where the bullets are coming from and return fire to you. So you're going to want to spray a little bit and then move, change positions, or even go behind cover. Still something that you should do, and of course you can wall bang and things like that all the same, so you should definitely abuse that. But just make sure that you're not full committing to sprays hoping that you're not going to get shot back, because you definitely will. Now, another thing that a lot of beginners seem to miss, and if you don't pick this up when you're starting, you're just not going to be doing this right at all throughout your entire Valorant career, more or less, and that's making sure to take note of important economic factors in the game. So first off, the most important thing, you need to look at what your team is able to buy and match it. If your team is saving, then you should probably save with your team so that all of you are on the same buy. You're gonna have a lot of situations where part of your teammates are buying and part of your teammates are saving. At that point, you have to make the call. Who on your team is buying? Do you trust these players? Do you think these players are good? Can you buy with them? What is the numbers of buyers and not buyers? Like, if 3 of your teammates are buying and 1 of them saving, then you should probably buy if you can, but also take a look at your economy. If you're not capable of buying armor plus weapons, then you should definitely be saving if there are people on your teammates saving. But even if you're not capable and your whole team is buying, you should probably just buy the best that you possibly can. You gotta think of every single round like an investment, where you're trying to stack as much advantage as you can on one side so that you win the round and cash in. And that's why it's really important to try to match your buys and sells on your team. And in addition to this, it's also important that you notice future buys and what can you afford. A lot of players make this core mistake where they will always be able to buy light armor, a rifle, and no abilities, right? But we just talked about how important and powerful abilities are, and armor can be the difference between you just dying to a really cheap weapon and you barely staying alive and getting a double or triple kill. So it's important to make sure that you're not always on this super light buy, and give yourself actual advantages. And especially if you're having multiple really bad rounds, I would like to see you reset, take things conservative and slow, and then build up proper full kits, full armor, rifle, and abilities, all of them, so that you give yourself the best shot walking into this next round. Now, the last but certainly not least mistake that you are making in your games, and that forcing duels far too quickly. And I can't emphasize this enough. You have a lot of time to take a duel and hit that shot. When you are challenging an enemy, there is a long time before they turn to you, look at you, line up a good shot, and actually hit you. But if you turn the corner, see them, start shooting before you stop, or don't focus on aiming long enough so that you're gonna whiff that first spray, enemies will be able to turn to you and kill you because you already committed to the spray. You're not resetting, you're committing to it completely, and you're kind of just a sitting duck. Okay, this is one of the things that good players get it right, and it's one of the things that allow them to smurf on lobbies and just dominate lobbies. So keep in mind that you have a lot more time to play with. I would suggest playing deathmatch and slowing down using something like a guardian, taking some time to line it up and actually hit that shot, and realize that especially if you look at an enemy and they're not paying attention to you, I want you to take extra time to make sure that those first bullets are really accurate. And even if they're not, I want you to actually take a step to the left, to the right, reset, take your time again, and try to aim again. I want you to do things correct and slow before you speed things up. You have more time than you think, and as long as you get used to this tempo, you can speed it up over time. But if you have any questions, definitely let us know in the comments down below, and you're definitely going to want to check out SkillCapped right here. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.